Shalom. So in this video, we're going to talk about sunset to sunset, the unsound doctrine. So we want to open with two precepts. We're going to start first with the book of Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 2. It says, "Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it." Right? Now, most of the times we read this, we're not understanding one form of adding to or taking away from the scriptures is what? Translating another culture into what the scripture is saying. So we grew up in a culture where we accepted things, and now we're reading the scriptures, we're experiencing reality, and what we're trying to do is to do what? To define it from what is already here. So you come, you read the scriptures. No, your perception is one thing, but the culture that Moses, Joshua, Ezekiel, and those people knew, you're not reading it from that cultural standpoint. So that's a form of adding to or taking away, which we will get into more examples as we go on. Now, the next one I want to read is the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 4 and verse 12. It says, "For fear is nothing else but a betraying of the succors which reason offereth." 13. "And the expectation from within being less, counteth the ignorance more than the cause which bringeth the torment." So to translate that into English, what is this really saying? It is saying that fear is nothing but the failure to use the help that reason has to offer. What is this reason? Knowledge. So the knowledge that was in Genesis 1:14 when he says, use the sun for days, use the moon for this, the constellation for this, that knowledge, because of our fear to use that knowledge, this is what happens. Verse 13, it says, "And the expectation from within, being less, counteth the ignorance more than the cause which bringeth the torment." So what is it saying? Because of the lack of confidence of using Genesis 1 verse 14, the sun for a light by day, the moon and constellation for night, use them for seasons, use them for days, and this and that. Because of that lack of confidence, what's going to happen? We give in to the fears. So making our fears stronger than the reality itself. That's all it is, right? So now we're going to look at this whole concept of the night comes before the day, right? So first we're going to talk about time. What is time? Time is the duration or the interval between two events or thoughts or feeling or objects, right? So if I take up this marker, the time would be, let me put it here, 0 minute, 00 second. So the first event or the first thought or the first object is the blue marker. Now, the second event or thought or object is taking up the black marker, right? So the duration or the interval between taking up the blue marker, 0.00, because the first thought is still timeless, 0.00. Now, the second thought of bringing up the black marker, this would be, let's say, 0.10. So time would be 10 seconds between this event, the blue marker and the black marker. So time is just a concept of the mind, because beyond time is what? Is eternity. So now I'm making this video. No, you are watching this video. No, another person is going to work. No, another person is praying. No, another person is cleaning the drain. No, another person is just waking up. All of that is happening in the eternal now. But how do we relate to all these events, objects, thoughts, feelings? Through the concept of the mind. The mind is limited, it is measurable by time. So that's the concept, but everything takes place in eternity, which is called, the universal word for eternity is no. Everything you do, you can only do it in the now. You have to go to work tomorrow. Tomorrow has to become now. You want to go on vacation next year. Next year has to become now for you to make that vacation. You cannot go to something called the future. You can only go there through the concept of the mind. So yes, existence is eternal, is eternity. We relate to different objects, events in our lives through time, the concept of the mind, right? So now, let us get into the 7 days. Let us get into the 7 days with the concept that the night comes before the day, right? So let us say each day, 12 hours, and each night, 12 hours, right? So we're working with that figure, 12 hours. So the seventh day, we can say here, we can say 12 hours in this seventh day, 12 hours in this seventh night, right? The sixth day, we can say 12 hours, 12 hours, because it's measurable from one event, from this point to this point, 12 hours. From this point to this point, 12 hours of night. So it's measurable between two events, right? Coming to the fifth day, 12 hours, night, 12 hours. Fourth day, 12 hours, night, 12 hours. Third day, 12 hours. Third night, 12 hours. Second day, 12 hours. Second night, 12 hours. First day, 12 hours. Now, this first night, as in Genesis 1, verse 5, where you said the evening and the morning were the first day. Matter of fact, let me read it. Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, it says, "And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day." Right? So this evening that was the first day, how many hours would you say it lasted? Because it has to be measurable. So from the interval between the day here, what would be the event here that you can say is measurable by 12 hours? There's nothing to relate to. There's no object there. And this is why this alone proves that this darkness being the beginning of time is illogical, is unrealistic, is unbiblical, it's unscriptural, it's everything that goes against reality. It's everything that goes against Genesis 1 verse 14, because Genesis 1 verse 14 is just giving us the knowledge that time comes from the movement of lights. There is no light moving here. This is just eternal darkness. And Genesis 1 verse 2, it says, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness." It did not say night. It says darkness. That was eternal darkness. It was beyond time. It was beyond 000. There was no event, no thoughts, no concept of the mind, nothing. It's just darkness. Similarly, you go into a cave and you turn out your lights. You have no concept of time. You have no concept of day and night alternating. That's just eternal darkness. That's not night. There's a difference between night and darkness. You're in a submarine. There's no changes between day and night, events to events. So you have no concept of day and night. That's darkness. You have to come to the surface, open up, and you experience the sun and the moon changing, and you say, okay, day and night. Next thing, a child in the mother's belly, right? How many months the child stays? 9 months. No, the child is in darkness. No consciousness of light, no thought, no event, no activity, nothing. The child is in eternal darkness. That 9 months is not from the standpoint of the child's experience. It's the standpoint of the mother or us that can say, oh, she's 9 months with child. But that does not have anything to do with the child. Otherwise, if the child was 9 months, the day the child is born, you would say he's 9 months and 1 day. The reason why the 9 months is not counted is because it's when the child comes to see the first movement of light. That's when the first time starts for that child. So if there are 8 billion people in the world, guess what? There are 8 billion different perception or concept of time, but there's one eternity, existence itself, Yahweh. He is eternity. Everything takes place in eternity. From each of us standpoint, we reference it through time. So time takes place in eternity. Eternity does not take place in time. Eternity is superior to time, right? So we understand that this would get rid of that sunset to sunset. And the next thing is, it says the evening and the morning were the first day. When did evening become an alternative for night? Right? Which, when we get into this further, you'll see how that is also impossible. Now, in order for us to not add to the scripture, meaning not translate other people's culture into this scriptures, we need to first do what? Redefine our own. How do you defeat a people or their God? You define their God for them. So they tell you what this word means, what this word doesn't mean, and you go by that definition. So they redefine their God. So now you are doing what? Teaching other people to do so. For example, sex out of wedlock is fornication. They gave us that definition because nowhere in the Bible, Old or New Testament, it's not there. No, you're trying to give life to that belief, to that imagination, and then you'll find scriptures to support because of the fear. You don't want to go back to the Old Testament where it says when two people have sex, as long as you give the father or whatever, it's legit. It's not fornication. So that fear is the same fear, that knowledge that we fear. This is why we don't want to question our beliefs. Like, I have a lot of things too that I started teaching, meaning when I came into this truth, that's what I learned. Now I have to do what? Change back some of them, right? So we should not be too ashamed then, because we were just doing what we thought was right. No, we're just gonna have to clear back up some things for the people who are coming after us, right? That's charity. Don't need to be arrogant. Hey, it's okay. We were wrong. We were following what we were taught. Now we start to examine things. We say, oh, this doesn't add up. This is not what the scripture is saying. Oh, this belief is cultural. It's not a scriptural concept. It's a cultural concept. We have to discern. We have to separate. We need to come out of her, my people. Come out of their philosophies. Come out of what their concept of a day is. What their concept of an evening is. What their concept of a morning is. We have to come out of that. That's the first state of our revolution, mentally, spiritually out, right? So now we're going to go to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 16. It says, and God made two great lights. Can we identify them? The sun and the moon. The greater light, which is the sun, to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Now, a lot of people are under the mindset or the impression that this is just for the fourth day, right? So now the question is, let's say that is true, that the sun and the moon were created on the fourth day. Now ask yourself, were there 3 sunless days? Were there 3 moonless nights? And if your answer is yes, to fit your perception, right? If your answer is yes, what was the object the Most High used to divide the day from the night? On the first day, the second day, and the third day. What is that object? And is that object still there that we can witness it? Or it's just a faith that is based on no understanding whatsoever. You see, we cannot let our fear to use these things overpower us. We don't want to question our beliefs, because what do you have to lose more than the belief? You're still going to be here. But ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself these questions so that understanding can overpower the fear rather than the fear overpowering your understanding. So, yes, the same sun and the moon that had been there from the beginning, he's just now giving us the knowledge to say, this is what you use to get this, right? So this is why we can give into this Gregorian calendar so much, where it based upon logics, not even logics, just mathematical calculations that do not add up. For example, how many days in a week? 7 days, no doubt. We all can attest to that, right? 7 days make 1 week. Now the question is, how many weeks are in a month? We all can agree that 4 weeks, a week is 6 work days and a rest day. Week, right? Seventh, 6 work days and a rest day. So we have 4 sets of 6 work days and a rest day. 4 weeks in a month. Now the question is, can 4 weeks make a month? Now that's something different. 4 weeks in a month, but 4 weeks do not make 1 month. Now it's the same thing when it comes to the year. The Gregorian calendar, what it does, it equates months to the year. But the question is, how many months are in a year? Let me put it here. 12 months equal 1 year, right? Now the question is, 12 months in 1 year. Can 12 months make a year? That's the question. Just like 4 weeks in 1 month, but 4 weeks cannot make 1 month. 12 months in a year. A year is the sun starting here in the east, going all the way around, come back to its starting point. That is a year. Now, within this movement of the sun, you have 12 months. Do the 12 months make a year? Can you rely on the 12 months to say that's a year? No, you can only rely on the sun coming back to its starting point. So you see the Gregorian calendar, 365 days calculation, and from this point to this point, that's a complete year. No, months cannot determine when the year begins. The only thing that can determine the beginning of the year is when the sun comes back to its starting point, right? So say, for example, the Most High should alter the sun, put it back a little bit, a few degrees back or whatever, right? Now, when you get to your 365 days count and your 12 months, guess what? What if the sun does not reach this position that you refer to as the equinox or the center? Is it still going to be a year? Yes, it's going to be 12 months. The 12 Gregorian months, the 365 days are going to pass. But what if the sun does not reach this position? Are you still going to say it's a year? No. So we need to get out of this mindset where we are translating their culture into the Bible to make it make sense. We don't need to do anything to make the Bible make sense. We just need to experience reality. The Most High gave us the sun, the moon, the constellations as landmarks. So when you look and see the sun at a certain point, you can tell what it is. Just like when you're dealing with morning. What is your experience of a morning? But we're not going to get there yet. So now we're going to look into the changing over from night to day concept. Let's go to the book of Exodus, chapter 12. And we're going to start at verse 10. It says, And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. Nothing of it remain until the morning. But the question is, let's say this is the 14th night of the month, and this is the 14th day of the month, right? The 6th day of the week. If something is proclaimed on the 14th of the month, the night and the day would still be the same calendar date. So why would there be a problem to let something stay over until the morning if it's considered the same calendar date? Just like, for example, if you prepare some food today, you can also keep it until the night because it's the same calendar date. That is for us who understand that the day comes before the night. But we understand that it ends at dawn. So when dawn comes tomorrow, we do not eat the food. It's a different calendar date, right? So the reason here why it's not kept until the morning is because it's going to be going into a different calendar date. Now let's jump to verse 12. It says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night." This night. So hold on. Let's get some understanding now. The 14th of the first month, we are here, right? Now it says, the congregation shall kill the lamb at evening, right? So remember, it's the 14th day. And they would say it starts at the sunset here. So sunset last night would be the 14th, the beginning of the 14th. Now it's a new day. This would still be the 14th, the day part of the 14th for them, right? Now you kill the lamb at sunset of the 14th, which should be sunset last night, right? And it says this night, the same night that the same time that you kill the Passover, the sacrifice, is the same time that the destroyer is going to come. So let's say 6 hours. Let us say you kill the Passover here at 6 p.m. Let's use 6 p.m. Now, in 6 hours, the destroyer is going to come, right? So you kill the Passover here at the first hour, sunset, because that's when they say is the beginning. Now, 6 hours after that, that should be the destroyer coming, right? Because it's the night of the 14th. Let's read it again. Exodus chapter 12 and verse 12. It says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night." This is talking about the same 14th day of the first month. Matter of fact, let's go to it. This is Exodus chapter 12 and verse 6. It says, "And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month." So he's talking about the same 14th calendar date, right? So we're seeing that that's the 14th day, right? You should kill it at evening. Remember, the evening of the 14th day would be here, sunset yesterday, last night, right? You kill the lamb at evening, at sunset, the 14th day. 6 hours after that, which is midnight, the destroyer is going to come. Now, what happens after that? Because the destroyer comes on the 14th night. Let's read it again. "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night." What is the night? The 14th. So the Most High did not pass through the land on the 15th night. It happened on the 14th night. So this is all backwards because what happens during this day? After the destroyer passed, were we still staying in the land of Egypt? No, so that means there would be a problem with the 14th day. Now, what some people do is try to say they kill the Passover at this point, right? But remember, if the sunset here would be going into the 15th night, that would be problematic because the destroyer did not pass over on the 15th night. It passed over on the night of the 14th. So this sunset to sunset doctrine is far from scripture, is far from Hebrew culture, is far from reality itself. It's an unsound doctrine. Let's jump down to verse 30 and 31. It says, and Pharaoh rose up in the night. Which one of the night? The night the destroyer came. Which night the destroyer came? Was it the 15th or the 14th? Came on the 14th night. Right? It says, and Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night. By what? What night? The night of the 14th, the night that the destroyer came. So to try to put it here to fit your belief or your imagination, that's adding to the scriptures. It says, and he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go serve the Lord as ye have said. This was after, remember, midnight was the destroyer. Midnight of the 14th, the destroyer came. He called Moses by night. So it's anywhere after midnight here. These events are taking place. Let's go to the book. Let's go to verse chapter 14. And jump down to verse 21. It says, it says, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. What night was this? Remember, the destroyer came at midnight of the 14th. Pharaoh called Moses that same time where the people were crying over the dead bodies, the night of the 14th, right? Which is after midnight. And he tell them to go, right? Now he says here, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. So this is doing what? Saying what? Anywhere after 12 here, after Moses, they packed up and left because that's why they were eating the Passover in a rush. They had to put their boots on, everything. They had all of that together already. They left somewhere between these hours, so it was yet dark. It was yet night, not evening, night, right? You don't call 2 a.m., 3 a.m. evening, 4 a.m. You don't say good evening at that hour, right? It says, verse 24 says, and it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians. Now the question is, what does it mean when it says in the morning watch? Based on experience, but based on your personal experience of morning watch, what do you call it? What is another word for morning watch? No, I'm not going to say. Let's just go to two precepts. Let's go to the book of 1 Samuel chapter 11. 1 Samuel chapter 11 and verse 11. It says, and it was so on the morrow that Saul put the people in 3 companies, and they came into the midst of the host in the morning watch. Right? In the morning watch. And slew the Ammonites until the heat of the day. So are you now getting the concept of the morning watch? Because it says until the heat of the day. Right? Let's go to another one in the book of Judith. Hold on. Let's find the book of Judith. The book of Judith, chapter 12 and verse 5, it says, Then the servants of Olfernus brought her into the tent, and she slept till midnight. She slept till midnight, and she arose when it was towards the morning watch. What is the other word for morning watch? Dawn, the break of day. Dawn is the same as the morning watch, right? So let's go back to the book of Exodus, verse 24, and it says, And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, because this now would be the deliverance for the Israelites. This is the true deliverance. This is when they saw the salvation of the Most High, the destruction of the enemy. When did it take place? At dawn. What happens at dawn? A new calendar date. That was the 15th. And this is why when you go to the book of Numbers, chapter 33 and verse 3, this is why it says this. Numbers 33 and 3. It says, And they departed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month. Why it says, and the morrow after the Passover. So Passover on the 14th, you kill the Passover, right? In the night, after you kill the Passover, in the night, that's the destroyer, midnight. Then they have 6 hours to leave where they were to make it to the Red Sea. Within that 6 hours, it would be doing what? Breaking dawn. So that's when they departed from the city of Ramses, the Egyptians, their dominion, everything. What is the 15th day of each month? The day of rest. What did we get from the Egyptians at that time? We got rest. We got delivered. The 15th day. So this is showing, there's so many things to show that the sunset to sunset doctrine is unsound, it's unhealthy, it's a disease. Now, the question is, how long does a morning last? Because we're going to deal with this evening and morning thing. How long does the morning last? Because people say, matter of fact, let's go back to the book of Genesis, chapter 1 and verse 5. It says, And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Let's jump down to verse 8. It says, And the evening and the morning were the second day. Verse 13, And the evening and the morning were the third day. Verse 19, And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Verse 31, And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Now here's a question. Since they're saying evening is the same as night, so 12 hours of night, right? And the morning, how long does the morning last? Because this now we need to question, right? We need to rely on the help that the knowledge of the sun, the moon, and the stars, Genesis 1 verse 14, is given us. We need to rely on that. Otherwise, we're going to give in to our fears. So they say the evening lasts 12 hours because the evening is the night. The morning, however, you're saying from the first hour of the day all the way approaching close to the sunset, you're saying that all of that is morning. You're saying that 2 p.m. on your clock, 3 p.m. on your clock, you're saying all of that is morning. 4 p.m. you're saying good morning. No, let's really question our belief system. When does the morning end? You see, from the first hour to, let's say, 6, that is morning. Midday is the end of the morning. Once it reaches midday, say it reaches midday here, at the 7th, 8th, 9th hour, so forth, you don't say good morning again. Who says good morning at the 9th hour? But guess what? Because of our imaginations, because we have given to the fears, we now have to find something to cover this area here. So what do we call it? Afternoon. Okay, where in the Bible tells you that when the midday is past, that period of the day is called afternoon. Nowhere in the Bible tells you that. You see, you're translating someone's culture into your belief system, and then you're imposing this perception in the scriptures. So when you're reading the scriptures, what you're really reading is what is here, not what is written, not the culture that Moses was trying to give us. So they taught their culture to us. No, we're teaching our children. We're in the Most High said we should come out of it. Yes, you might use it for your work, for your businesses, for your school, or for whatever purposes, but we still have to make a distinction to say, okay, this is what the Most High gave us, but because we're in this system and our business and so forth revolve around this, we use this calendar for, but this is what the scripture says. We have to make that separation. And once we give in to the fears, it's going to be hard because fear revolves around the ego. And the ego is going to get prideful. It's not going to want to say, no, this is not the correct thing, but I'm just doing it because my business sake, my work sake, my school sake, or my whatever. We're not going to say that. So now we're going to do what? Sow fig leaves to fit ourselves among the other trees in the garden, the other nations, their cultures. That's what we're doing. We're adapting their culture and we're translating it into the scriptures when we read it. It's okay to come out of her. It's okay to make a distinction. So the morning, as I said, if you're going by Genesis 1 and 14, the knowledge that comes from it, you see the light coming over the eastern horizon, you see it's breaking dawn. That light, you're not seeing the object, you're not seeing the sun, you're seeing the grace of the sun, you're seeing the light. And that light breaks the dawn. Now, coming up over the eastern horizon, that's when you start to see the object itself, which is the sun. You see the light before you see the sun. The sun has to come up over the eastern horizon for you to see it, right? Now, coming up over like this, to over your head, that 90-degree angle, you would refer to as morning. That would be the landmark. The landmark is the sun from the eastern horizon to over your head. That's morning. The sun from over your head to the beyond the western horizon, that's evening. Now, this is one of the things it's hard to understand with New Testament followers because I mean sometimes I can understand why Torah only people can say what they say about New Testament followers, right? When you go to the book of Matthew, chapter 28 and verse 1, the question is the first question that we have to ask ourselves is Matthew contradicting Moses in Genesis chapter 1? That's the first question we need to ask ourselves. And then we can build our understanding on that answer. So, is he contradicting Moses in Genesis chapter 1? The answer is no. So he says, in the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. So, Sabbath is seventh, remember, in the end of the seventh, right? In the end of the seventh, as it began to dawn. So, hold on. So, if the end of the seventh day, right, ends at dawn, just like it says with the Egyptians with the morning watch, it ends there. One cycle ends there, right? So, if the seventh day ends at dawn, then by default, the sixth day ends at dawn. The fifth day ends at dawn. The fourth day ends at dawn. The third day ends at dawn. The second day ends at dawn. And the first day would start where? At dawn. So, where in Matthew 28, verse 1, would you correlate with Genesis chapter 1 when it says the evening and the morning were the first day, starting at sunset? Because nowhere in Matthew 28 is saying that sunset is the starting of the first day of the week. Because anywhere the first day of the week starts, guess what? All the other days are going to start there. So if Matthew is saying the first day starts at dawn, breaking dawn, the light of the sun coming over the eastern horizon, right? If Matthew is saying that, we know that you're saying that Moses is not saying that. So it goes back to the question, is the author of Matthew 28 speaking against Moses? Because they are not saying the same thing. Or is it because of your fear, why you're afraid to question the belief system? So therefore you tiptoe around it, and when you're getting into conversations with people and you're being questioned, you get agitated because these are questions that your fear doesn't like, and your fear gets irritated by the spirit of truth. So you rather turn a blind eye to it. No, the universal scriptures that everyone goes to confirm their belief that the day starts at a new calendar date starts at sunset. The book of Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 27. Also, on the 10th day of the seventh month, there shall be an atonement. So, on the 10th day, let me mark it here. On the 10th day of the seventh month, right? So, that would be from the sunset here to the sunset here at the end of this day, right? Now, when you jump down to verse 32, it says, "It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and ye shall afflict your souls, in the ninth day of the month at even, from evening unto evening shall ye celebrate your Sabbath." Now, let's say Moses in Genesis chapter 1 was saying that all the days started at evening, sunset, dusk, right? If you already teach that all the days start at sunset, why would you then need to tell somebody that on the 10th day started at sunset? Once you say the 10th day, guess what? You'd understand that the beginning of the 10th day, it starts there. The reason why Moses had to specify to start it at evening is because all the days do not start at sunset, they start at dawn. So now the question is, what is your experience of an evening? If Genesis 1 verse 14 is your foundation, right? If the knowledge that descends from Genesis 1 verse 14, when it says the greater light rule the day, the this, the that, right? If that is your foundation, and if that is what you have confidence in, and that is what you're relying on, what is your experience of evening? Like I said, when you step out 3 p.m., what are you experiencing? Are you experiencing something called afternoon? Or are you experiencing something called evening? You have to go back to the help that reason or knowledge offers you to answer these questions. Otherwise, you might be translating a culture in the scripture that is causing you to add to the scriptures and you're not even aware. So when we fast for the atonement, we start it here. We start at the ninth day, midday, because midday is the beginning of evening. As soon as the midday passed, evening starts. We do not have something called afternoon. I do not experience something called afternoon. Once the midday is passed, the morning ends, and now it's starting of midday. What is the landmark? The sun being in a certain position, and we know that yes, it goes by the time of the year. So yes, while in spring it will be in the center, we know that in the fall it will be more on the southern side of the sky, right? But most people they go by 12 o'clock to have an average or a certain point, or they use the 12 o'clock as their landmark to say that's the midday. So we go from evening to evening, from this evening, the end of midday. So no eating. Naturally tonight when we sleep, naturally in the night when we sleep, you'll be fasting. That's why when you wake up each morning, you say breakfast, whatever you eat. If you have some fruits, if you have food, whatever you call it, breakfast. So you'll be naturally in that state. And then in the morning, you do not eat anything until what? The evening, the middle of the day again. So that's still a whole period of 24 hours. But the reason why the scripture had to mention two separate calendar dates is because it's talking about two separate calendar dates. If the 10th starts at sunset yesterday, right? You would not need to say the 9th because let's say 6 p.m. yesterday start would be the beginning of the 10th. You would need to say, okay, sunset on the 9th. It does make sense. Anything before 5:59 would be considered the ninth day of the month. Once it reaches that 6 o'clock, that would be the 10th day of the month. It has nothing more to do with the ninth. So that's a poor excuse or a poor example to use to give life or meaning to the scripture, evening to evening. Just like when you say something for the Passover, you're not going to say, do this on the 13th day at evening to refer to the 14th day. When you say, do this on the Sabbath, you're not going to say, start on the 6th day at evening. No. It has two separate calendar dates because it's talking about two separate calendar dates. So we need to redefine our God and what He says and stop relying on the culture that we grew up in to define it for us. Because as long as we're under their definition of our God, their concepts of our God, we will always be away from our God. And they don't need to do it anymore. We're already doing it by not coming out of their culture, not coming out of their cultural context or concept, not coming out of their cultural definition, not coming out of their cultural ideology of our God. So I hope this gives clarity on the fact that the day starts at dawn, according to Matthew 28, and that's what Moses is actually saying. He wasn't saying the evening and the morning makes up 24 hours, because morning does not last 24 hours. Even in your experience, regardless of what belief you hold, you know deep down in your spirit that the morning does not last 24 hours. And you know deep down in your spirit that the evening is not the same thing as night. That's translating another culture in the scriptures. And we're teaching men to do so. And this is why it's, for me personally, it's hard for me to get into conversations with people who do not use agriculture as a day-to-day lifestyle. These people are the first to demonize the moon, demonize the sun, demonize the constellation, and the knowledge that comes from it. And not realizing that's their first, that's their main recipe for destruction. Once you demonize it, the landmarks that the Most High give us, something that is unchangeable, that we cannot change, we cannot alter. You notice he never says, any man that add to the moon, add to the sun, shall be punished. Because we cannot do it. Not even what you call Satan himself cannot change the ordinance of the moon and the sun. So he didn't need to do that, but he said, do not do it with the scriptures. And there will be a punishment, because what? We have the ability to do it. And I'm not talking about what the Romans did with the scriptures. I'm talking about the fact that we ourselves are translating their culture into the scripture. The judgment goes for us too, who are doing so. We need to go back to Genesis chapter 1 and 14 and see what knowledge comes from the sun itself, the moon, and the constellation. Shalom.